you can track in the West End the change of the population moving north. Early in the 19th century, there was a small node of African American residents down near the river in a part of what is there's no residents anymore.
They call it the Black Bottom. Yeah.
Right.
Bottoms, yeah.
And then that begins to grow north as other people, and you can almost track it street by street, year by year, decade by decade, and all you have to do is follow the census. It takes a lot of time to do it, but it can be done. And it's always much more complex and much more interactive. The best way to really learn about it is talking to the people who live there. I remember doing an interview with a woman. We were doing, at the Museum Center, we had an exhibit on the West End, and we were talking about the 37 flood, but this woman said that when she was a young girl living in the West End, she went to school, and I forget what the school was, but the custom was to go home at lunch, and she invited her African-American friend to come home and lunch with her. So she came home, we got home that night, and she was told, no, she never comes here again because she can't come north of such and such a street. Well, they were kids. They didn't understand that. But the family. So that complexity of our communities is much more than the generalizations that we usually speak of them in.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go, John.
Yeah, and that's right. You know, with the great migration from the South started about 1915, then you had all the blacks leaving the South coming north. And as they came, everybody, Jews, whites, anybody that owned property in those areas saw that as an opportunity to make some money, and they divided a lot of those houses up, made them apartments, and people moved in. And as those people that owned those buildings were able to get a little bit better money, and they moved out, moved to better housing, and more blacks came in, because you had that total growth of blacks coming in from the South, and that's with that expansion, most whites started to move to what they considered better places. They went to Price Hill, they went out to different places and left that community. Primarily was almost 80% black at the time that I lived there. There were other whites and Italians and Jews, and the Germans lived around the corner and everything, but it was primarily at that point in time a pretty large group of African Americans. Now, to say if the Jews had not been there when I lived there, it would have still been the same community. It would just, somebody else would have filled that in.
we could go on for a long time, but I want to thank all of you for coming this evening. Certainly want to thank Abby for assembling this exhibit.
Abby.
Thank all of the members of our panel who's each brought a different perspective, and encourage all of you to interact with the images and help us know these stories that have begun to be shared here tonight. Take the time to write them down.
This exhibition provides us with an opportunity to begin a conversation again. And we would really like to hear, we've recorded it, but we'd love to hear these stories in your own words that you've told and the memories that this has brought to you. Thank you, this illustrious panel. I cannot thank you enough for spending your time with us.